Hi class, welcome to the first PowerPoint audio video for LP number 1. This covers the first two chapters in the text per the assignment, chapters 1 and 2. In the written text, I had said that the seminar assessment assignments would be on the third slide. They're going to be on the second slide. So here's the first one, and it's just a simple question that relies on the information that was presented in the first two chapters. Second chapter being primarily about strategy, and the first chapter sort of an overview of the history of the internet. Just describe some ways that in your history with your company or your firm or your organization that the internet has impacted that company or organization, whether it's a for-profit or non-profit, and then finish it off by adding some ways that you think the internet could improve the marketing capabilities and business model of your chosen. If you don't have a firm or organization, just pick one that you're interested in. So real quickly, the internet began its genesis in really in the 60s, and the military wanted a way to ensure that communications between bases and as well as improved communications between universities doing military research would be maintained in case of a nuclear attack. And the theory was that you had all these different power lines at the time, telephone lines actually, not power lines, but telephone lines were largely on power lines. They ran in common. And that if a nuclear attack, for example, wiped out a particular city, there's a myriad of ways that different areas are connected to one another, so some kind of communications would survive. And that was really the beginning of the internet. And then certainly what happened in the 80s, obviously, and even more so in the 90s, it began to be utilized mostly for communication purposes between organizations and outside the military and universities. And in the 90s, it became commercialized. So what are the various components of all aspects of web commerce? You have retail, you have advertising, you have computers, you have network hardware, you have software, you have ISP service, and you have consultants. And these are all the various industries that have participated in the growth of e-commerce and e-marketing. Now, we've talked, you may have heard the term discussed in your text, Web 2.0. And Web 2.0 is most of what we've known about how the evolutionary elements of the internet up to this point, where it's improved services and improved scalability. We've learned to create and mine and analyze big data. We've been able to leverage the long tail, which I think is really interesting. There's a book called The Long Tail, and I don't know what the term means. Look it up. I'm kind of limited on as I told you in the emails about getting through these PowerPoint audios, I run into real trouble if I exceed 15 minutes in loading them. So I'm going to rely on you in most cases to follow your own interest, and long tail would be one of them. That and business models that you want to do, make sure you understand them and read up on them. And what's going to happen with the internet in the near future, Internet of Things, which I introduced as a video, TED-Ed video, and in discussion thread number 2 was one of those. But this ability of the internet to, from a research standpoint, from a communication standpoint, to deal in real time, to be able to talk to your computers, which is the semantic, or your cell phones, this sort of thing. There's in mobile geolocation through GPS is introducing some wonderful e-marketing opportunities, as well as some scary possible social impacts that are related to those that we'll talk about later. So chapter 2 is really about strategy. And there are 3 plans of attack for a business in general to exercise. The first one is to produce the product, service cheaper. The second one is to produce or provide the product or service better. And then the third strategy is a combination of those 2. And the relevance of that to this course is that the internet allows businesses to do these things, to do these strategies in their present business models, or create extensions of their business models, or completely different business models like never before. So how does it do this? Well, there are 6 primary attributes or applications of the internet to a firm's business model. That is cost reduction. It can reduce costs in all kinds of dimensions. It allows them to provide much more content, different, whether albeit advertising or information about their products or services. They can communicate directly with customers. This communication allows customers to communicate with one another, to connect with one another and create communities. The individual interaction between the business and individual customers allows for customization, and at the end of the day, it allows for commerce. So what businesses can do is they can take those 6 things that we just talked about in the previous slide and develop kind of sub-strategies that go along with the 3 that we talked about a couple of slides ago. One of the things they can do is create more effective distribution and transaction channels. They can create more effective communication channels. They can take the information that they've gathered and analyze it and use that again in their business models, their customer relationship management, their offerings, create new products altogether. And of course, again, they can develop different elements of the internet as they apply to their business model to increase efficiencies and reduce their costs. This all in the context of using the internet's three primary marketing applications, which is to create a billboard for information purposes, i.e., a website or a web presence, and may or may not use that as a transaction vehicle in order to sell their product. And then in some cases, depending on the nature of the product itself, to actually deliver the purchased product over the internet. What's an example of that? Well, it's anything that's digitized. So for music, for books, for software, you can not only sell them online, but you can deliver them online, as opposed to an automobile that can be sold online, but has to be delivered through more traditional channels. Now, the book talked about Porter's Five Forces, and that's a concept that you should be familiar with through your management classes. Uh, and your first page, there's a video to watch around it where they interview Porter. But long story short, is that the internet has been an extremely disruptive force between industries and has changed the dynamics within those industries by a number of different ways. For example, within the travel industry and the stock trading industry, the information is now ubiquitous, and it has made the customers in those cases, by providing them information, much more powerful than they were previously. One of the main things that the book talks about that the internet has done as a cost reducer is this reducing supply chain management expenses. And it has made search costs easier across a myriad of products. It's lowered, as a consequence, transaction costs. You think of banking, where now you can pay a bill online rather than have to mail it or take it in for delivery. Uh, it has it has allowed businesses to break down their customer base into narrower and narrower target markets, and allowed for standardized products. Standardized products while making them customized, or at least in some cases communications at the same. I'm not going to spend any time on this particular slide, but it's a very good one in terms of, from your text, summarizing the supply chain management, and you can infer from these various steps how the internet might might be applied to different business operations or business models. You might use this in your first paper assignment in answering the basic question. There's some exciting new things that are coming as a consequence of the internet that have to do with various businesses, inventory management, and marketing. One of those is RFIDs. It'll have a huge impact in supply chain management on inventory control. You take an issue like this poor cow out in somewhere in Montana, perhaps, or Wyoming, and you put a RFID chip in its ear, and you can track its progress, its health, all the way to the slaughterhouse, and ultimately to delivery of that product to through related distribution channels to the supermarket. And going back to that example, the RFID, That can even affect various stages of the distribution channel payment by those that are in that distribution channels. So, summary, I'm just going to put these up here and you can read through them. But there's a number of different, again, impacts as a consequence of the internet, e-marketing in general, on different kinds of businesses. These are just a few, and it's become an integral part, obviously, of our daily lives. We all know that. And again, this can help you in answering the first half, part A of the seminar assessment. But it's good to review and to know and take inventory from time to time of all the different ways that it's affected our lives and is affecting our lives. Many of the rules that businesses operated by are forever are forever changed and seem to be forever changing. So that brings us to the end of this first video PowerPoint